Today, Rinpoche continued his commentary on the 12 links of dependent origination and addressed some of the more difficult points presented in the Lamrim Chenmo about this topic. So once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and specifically we're looking at the section on the stage of the path for beings of medium capacity. So when we look at the outline of that section, it's actually entitled Training the Mind in the Stages of the Path Shared in Common with Beings of Medium Capacity. We find that there are 4 categories. First category is the mental training. The second category is the measure of the determination to be free. Third category is dispelling misconceptions. And then the fourth category is ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation. So when we look at the first category, which is the mental training, we'll find that that's divided into 2 categories. First, identifying the mind intent on liberation, or identifying a mind of renunciation. And then a second category of a method for developing the mind intent on liberation, or the method for developing renunciation. So when we get to that section on the method for developing renunciation, there are 2 categories. First category is reflection on suffering and its origin, and then the second category is reflection from the viewpoint of the 12 links of dependent arising or origination. So we've completed everything up to that second category, so now we're dealing with the section on the 12 links of dependent origination, a reflection from the viewpoint of the 12 links of dependent origination. So in English, that starts on page 315. Okay, so we're actually going to start on page 319, and it's the abbreviated classification of the factors. It's actually the second category when we look at the main heading, reflection from the viewpoint of the 12 dependent arisings. There are 4 categories. It's the second category. So we're starting on page 319. So we've completed the section which is the division into 12 factors, so that goes over those 12 different links of dependent origination, and now we're at that second abbreviated classification of the factors. And so in Jayan Sheva's outline, we find 6 different categories for this section. So the first category deals with a quote from the Compendium of Knowledge, and we'll go slowly through that.
다 팬바스 가서 베이 두지나 어떤 마음이 그저 말해 팬바스 팬바스는 대바 네 팬비연라들 된연라진 토모 말해봐 니반 뒤제제래 소만 나시게 돼서 그 네 가서 그래 르라소바트 수가 팬바르만도 대두 그 르라소부 조여 말어 팬비연라스 펑비연라송디 펑비연라데 디르보 지바 메종아바 제시 조바르바 뇽바초와 어디 조비거들 펑비연라스 다 펑비연라제 되네 뭐반 루바시비연라데 제바시바 고바초바 조바시빌레송 말바
that's
어데데 네 저와도 가시 루바시비다 마오버서데 버
that's
되네 뭐반 루바시비연라 뭐반 루바시비연라스나 네 뭐반 루바시바스나 어데 마오버기사이 버 마오버 뭐반 루바시바데 제바시바도 고발내바 조바세바 세바송데 네 저와도 가셔도 누구여로다 대두수 조여 말어 ane sebadan lambadan seba os te to mara wate je ta tanma gogunone kundule gogunan tambe tin kundule yonla ndo duba jeda ba shena pembi yonla dan pambi yonla sana yonla junyo na ne thoma mari ba de ban duje gele somba na she son de je pambi yonla 펑비연라 다 지바 메존 뜻은 말베 지바 메존 아바 제시 두바레바 두바 소와 어디니체 당어 반두바 시베연라 데 제바 시바다 고발렘바 조바 시바 손드체
데 마옴바 림베체
어디 마옴바로와
오케이
제바 시바다 고바 제바 시바 고발렘바 조바 시비 되서 저와도 가서 조여 말어와 누버 시바연라스 누버 시바 뭐바 두비연라 저와도 가서 네 주변에 지와도 가셔 어때 틀자고 그래서 어때 타테바 임바 타테바 임바 구이제도 예서 어때 아무도 인사 말봐 칼레 준 말아
that's so we begin with the major heading, the abbreviated classification of the factors, and then we have the quote from Asanga's Compendium of Knowledge. When we look at Asanga's body of work, we have the 5 treatises on the levels and then the 2 compendiums. So this falls categorically under one of the 2 compendiums, and this is called the Compendium of Knowledge. So this is the first category of Jayan Sheba's commentary, the first category in the divisions that Jayan Sheba sets forth in his commentary. So it's divided into the 4. The factors can be further divided into 4. Those factors that are projecting factors, those factors that are projected factors, those factors that are actualizing factors, and those factors that are actualized factors. So there are 4 divisions that we can divide them into. And if we look at it in that way, the projecting factors, we can say, are ignorance, compositional activity, and consciousness. So the projecting refers to something that will happen later. When we look at projecting, it's a later occurrence. It's projecting something later. And then the projected factors are what is projected, what occurs now. And those projected factors are name and form, the 6 sources, contact, and feeling. So then we have the next category of the actualizing factors, and this is another category which we would say is something that occurs later or in the future. And the actualizing factors are craving, grasping, and existence. And then the actualized factors, which are those that occur now or that are present occurrence, are birth, aging, and death. So we find all of that presented in Asanga's Compendium of Knowledge. So I'll read that now. What sort of categories do you obtain by abbreviating the factors? There are 4 types: the projecting factors, the projected factors, the actualizing factors, and the actualized factors. What are the projecting factors? Ignorance, compositional activity, and consciousness. What are the projected factors? Name and form, the six sources, contact and feeling. What are the actualizing factors? Craving, grasping, and existence. What are the actualized factors? Birth, and death. So this is the quote, and it's explaining these four different categories of projecting, which refers to ignorance, compositional activity, and consciousness. The projected, which refers to name and form, six sources, contact, and feeling. Actualizing factors, which refer to craving, grasping, and existence. And then actualized factors that refer to the birth, aging, and death. Dixon Rinpoche.
Jidwa, Sundwa, Jujidwa, Sunji, Saji Sun, Sungan, Dombu Jidwa, the Lawate, and Jidwa de la, and Jidwa, Susushiba, what the Nijigi, True, True Marba.
Rinpoche, they're going to do.
Jidwa, what the Jidwa Tere. Yola dua cheta bashena pempi yola to pampi yola ta ngoba druba shibe ngoba druba shibe yola gos what the jedua the jedua the jedua ta ni ba de
okay
susu shiba de sha ta susu ne pempi yola to pampi yola ta druji yola drubi yola susu shiba de le susu shiba de what ma yong do susu shiba de le susu shiba la to ju ta Sususheba la, Toju dan, Pensu dan, ne, Trudan sheba, Trule, Trugnan, ta Tambuta dana Teredua, Trule, Tamu the Kudis at the Saji, Taniba Sususheba de la, what the Sususheba dana. Pembian la conscience with the Pembian la Pombian la Marsebijin song said Niba Sususheba del Niba Sususheba Pembian la conscience Tamal Pembian la Samatu Susu Marwa Ta Pembian la conscience Mariba dan Duji dan Nabrasheba was Pembian la de Toma Mariba the Niba Dujigale Sumba Nashi Zundres Nabasheba was Pombian la conscience, Najiba Mezu, Naba Jeshe Tuba, Nuba Toa. What about Pombian la Jagures? Toa was what Sajiniba Treja.
Oh, okay. So the way that this is actually broken down is it's first broken down into the first category that deals with the division of four, the course of main division of four. So it's this first paragraph in the compendium of knowledge. And then we get into the individual explanations or the individual factors. And then this next paragraph falls into that category. So the first category deals with those four. And then the next category deals with the individual factors. And it's actually all in Asanga's quote. This second category begins at what are the projecting factors? Ignorance, compositional activity, and consciousness. What are the projected factors? Name and form, the six sources, contact and feeling. What are the actualizing factors? Craving, grasping, and existence. What are the actualized factors? Birth, aging, and death. So those two, Jayan Sheba breaks those two paragraphs up into two categories in the outline.
What the Sumba do what the Rendo Sumbata, Ngoban Dubashi la Conscience, Ngoban Dubashi la Conscience, Siba, Jeba Siba, the Guba Lambada, Siba, Juba Sibile, Jeba Siba, Guba Lamba, Juba Sibile Sunde, and then Ngoban Dubashi la res. Tangoba Trubi, Yola the Conscience, Joa the Gashu was. Jeba Siba the Guba Lamba, Juba Sibi Lela Dene, call it Joa, Shoa, Gawa the Shoa, what they Number two Biola.
Yeni de Kanga Nipa, Rebe, Susu Sheba.
Or did it? Somebody, Nobanduba Shiviola conscience, somebody.
So then the Asanga the Gundu lay the Ewa Sum Irbe.
Sanga Gundula
Ewa Sum.
담부 송으로다 제도와 송 안에 주제도와 송마르베 담부 제도와들라 답이지 오는 사지 조딩 원바레 조그는 담부도 마르베 연락도 도와 강시나 팬비 연락도 판비 연락도 뭐만 두배시 연락고 어디 담부지
Lesso.
다 니바 소소시 받던마
Lesso.
안에 니바들에 팬비 연락 강시나서 다 마세시 좀 말베 칼리 카보 요사들 제르면서 코라 먹고 전데 간데 세부조용도 말베 네 팬비 연락 강시나 마리바다 뇌제도 나버셔 봐 오스
Lesso.
네 팬비 연락 강시나 매다 조다 제제 조다 제바도 소오스
Lesso.
어떻게 니바레
Lesso.
손방어반 두바시면라 어떤데 손방어반 두바시면라 강시나 시바단 아바단 시바오스 제바 시바단 고발렘바 조바 시바손데 어반 두바시면라 어반 두비면라 강시나 저와도 가쇼스 어때 셰송바타로스
Nipa.
어떻게 니바 손바로 손바
Okay, so then it looks like it's further divided. Am I missing some vocabulary here? Rapje, it's further divided, right? This is divided into three categories, correct?
네, 걔가 대충 수수제 연락주는 수수제와 수수제와들 펜바당 마리바 펜바당 판바
Pamadam Pamani.
니시 아니 제제라는 가사데
Ngopa Drubi Sheba.
누가 주바시 사실 데니 데세니 치거래
This is a Sheba Yomarbe.
수수제바 그러니까 수수제바 콜라 두두 그래
니바 담부도 담부도 연락 도와서 담부도 레도와 담부지 니바데
Sheba.
니바 수수시바들로데 팬비연락 강시나 마리바단 뒤제단 남브라시바고 팬비연락 강시나 메단주도 제제 초아오스 더바도 수수시바 수수시바레
데바토면 데제마 가사 시간이들 수수제바라
다 송바들 ngoban두바시비연락 수수시바도 말바 송바 ngoban두바시비연락 제바시바도 고발렘바 주바시바 송데 강시나 시바단 렘바단 시바드 제바시바 고발렘바 주바시바 오스 당어바 두비연락 강시나 저와도 가지 오스
Okay.
메송 수수제바를 니 차스다 수수제바를 데센 담문이 지체 올라 데센이 지차스다 송차스
송아
송차스
I think so.
수수시바들로와데
시바도 멤버 수수제바 대신 시간 시간 데센치로 되는 거 사로 수수제바를 되는 거 사로
수수시바들 다 담부터 강가마 도움을
그래
연락도 도와서 담부지 네바 팬비 연락스 네바지 ngobandubashi 연락 송바지 ngo바 두비 연락 강시나스 지바렌도 지바
제
대바도 지바렌
제츠르고요 제츠는 추리도도
지바지 지바
수수제바를 대신 니 차스다
수수시바를 연락도
연락도
팬비 연락 마리바도 쉐바고 팬비 연락 강시나 초아오스 니바지 근데 ngobandubashi 연락 강시나 시바당 람바당 시바오 ngoba 두비 연락 강시나 저와도 가쇼 셰송바타로스 어떻게 용도 왔다 디공 도주에 된조도
도저히 그가데 뒤로 거래
도주 다 오들 도주에 내가도
Qualms and doubts. But okay, so it's
Yes,
three. It's divided into three
categories,
categories. So it looks like the compendium of knowledge is divided first into the categories of four. So it's the course explanation of the four. What are the categories do you obtain by abbreviating the factors of four types? Projecting factors, projected factors, actualizing factors, and actualized factors. Then it looks like its next category, it's broken down into the individual explanations, but then it's divided into two. The projecting and projected, and the actualizing and actualized. So the projecting factors, ignorance, compositional activity, and consciousness, and the projected factors, name and form, the six sources, contact, and feeling, are the second category. And then the third category is what are the actualizing factors? Craving, grasping, and existence. What are the actualized factors? Birth, aging, and death. So that's the third category. Then the fourth category deals with the qualms, deals with a doubt section. We're now at number 4. Okay. 2 Chenmo Rinpoche. Thank you, Rapture. That's so.
Ona so to choba ko marba ona phemba tan rubi ne junde chamba ni jes phemba tan rubi phemba tan phambi la rubi la to rubi la junde chamba ni she so junde chamba ni je seje ji gi jowa chaji ton na seje ji jowa chani ton jowa ni ko ne wo to ko marba
La so.
Sana Pemba to Pompeyla, Noban Rubashivilla, Nova Trubula, Junde Tanya, Sejen Jiki, Tenduela Junior, Saji Dongre, Sejen Jiki, Tenduela, Sani Duns, to what good and what to work home with. Wana Pemba Town, Ruby, Junde Sabanijas, Pemba to Pompeyla, Rubashivilla, Trubula, Junde Sabanije, Sejen Jiki. Joa Lambi, Junde Saji Duna, Sani Duns, Sejen Jig, Joa Lambi, Yola Junior, Dandy Saji Dunbury, Sani Duns. Joaji, that Tomatana, what the gentleman was the Tomatana, Dandy Yola Junior or the Pambian, the Pompion, Noba Trubashib, Ruby Yola with the gay, Sejen Jig, Joa Saji Dance, Saji Dambaina, Tomatana. Des deux générations, tu vas trouver Jesus, des deux générations, je vais maison à pas dire tu vas tu vas trouver Jésus. C'est pas ce que tu vas chez pas, me là ça. Des deux générations, je vais maison à pas dire tu vas trouver Jésus, et je vais c'est pas tu vas chez pas dire que nous. 어디 콘데부 주타로 제바 세바 저와서 세바 머리라사 니바다나 네 팬비연라도 팬비연라 루브르시비연라도 루비연라 니부 세제지기 저와 차니 돈스 로바이나 니바다나 준데쿠 샤말라 마리바다 준데쿠 샤말라 마리바다 뒤지 Juduji Nashi na Mabanjolasa Nashi na Mabanjolasa Judu Kushamatala Tene Toma Maribata Niban Duji Leta Sumba Nashi Mabanjolus Mabanjola Jundu Hamala Pembata Hamiola Nitumarve Hamala Siba Silenta Siba Mabanjol Shenas Sena Siba Mabanjol Shenas Pompiola, Pompiola, Hotela, and Jiba Siba to Goba Lamba, Chuba Siba to Mabanjol Shena, Chuba to Kune, Tata the Majid Lejo Marbe.
That's so.
Land la, Kotuk Land, Goba Shibugun Lands, Lankani Legua, Kotuk Land to what there is at Tanjajibe, Kotuk Land, the Jermajo to Kotuk Land, there is, Jumate. Penji ji ju kampamba teni, roji ji ju rujin, pamba teni truba na, teni la, jiwa tang gashin jubi sharos, wata jermi ju kutu gina deres.
Kuatu gina.
Kutu sana.
Understood.
Jermi ju tulu kuwa ju yoro, wata kuwa tu du yoro, wata lina deres, kutu gina. Gashin jubi wata kutu gina deres.
Nipa, Guntugilen, Tambo Nipa?
Somba Goba Shibugun land la sondo. Somba Goba Shibugun land la sondo, res, Ulumaka son legua.
Purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, purpose, thank you.
Tu mets de Penji ju Kampamba Teni, Roji ju Rujin, Pamba Teni, Trubana, Teni la Java the Gashu Bes, what the land the general Kodugan res, Kodugan. Taniba. And the Gobashi Bugun land la Sonreta. Gobashi Bugun land la Songunan Tomadere. Ona Junde Queen to Shibi Shashinas, Chobaco Marba. jude kuyo su shebi pambi yun la pen rubi yun la ruba shebi yun la rubi yun la ni jin su shebi jisha she na penje jin rebi du den dans penje jin rebi du den dans toma mari ba da ni ba du ji le sumba na she song gen rebo du gen den ba ta da jeba siba goba ne ba chuba sibi ne rebo du gen den ba de 네 타티바레스 타티바 임발라 타티바 임바 쿠이셰도 덴바레스 펜지 제비 두네당 로제 제비 두데지 체니 타티바라 타티바 임바 덴비셰데 하마는 봄비 되나 사변성 되지 제바 메중가 바치시 두바지바 두그걸로 제바시 토마 마리바드 니반 뒤지 토마 나시게 뒤서 네 사면상 뒤에를 마투지 랑고 마두버레스 토마 마리바드 니반 뒤지 토마 나시게 뒤서 제바 메유수 주요 마르와 디 사면상 뒤에를 마두 모투요 마레스 라게 고 마두베 마오바나 두게 완요라스 주틀라 테나 마오바 네 두게 와레스 두게 완줄라 샤만 도덴테 주비 거 임베스 제바 메종가 바제제 샤만에 도덴테 주비 거 임베 쓴달라 두게 와
네, 에와숨, 네 탐보.
대바 tombo
네, 세데.
고바시비 군을 렌스노가 non tombo 대바들에
Kutu actualized or realization is better understood.
Realization, actualized.
Yeah, kutu.
And then those three categories. I want to go.
Two categories. they right now, what Srimati explained is the for the second category.
Right, but aren't
For the
there
second
three
part.
categories in the second category? 네, 니pa,
Three.
에와숨.
Kutu gwibak shebala saji shiro, saji sum.
고바시발라
Gwibak shebala saji sum.
고바시바들라
숨.
Saji sum no gurushi. Tada saji damu chintati.
고두글랜다 고바시비 군을 렌스노마르다 고두글랜 담보지제 다 고바시비 군을 담보 니에바 숨바
Sumba sum.
오노
Three.
탐보 닝가레.
담보 고두글랜드로다 담보 테임바
니pa. Gundulan. So at realization is the first of the three.
Yeah, second one's purpose. Purpose is within the purpose there are three. Right now, Rinpoche explained the first one for the second part, right?
Which is actualization.
No. We not actually, the whole here. Ngapa explaining in Lamrim. Ngama dina pamba ki tibati sabin tu ne de ranking gungu madupala maoba na donge juros. They explained so far to here from penje ki debu ki donge ki town. Doje ki debu tu donge ki senyi thade da temper chedo. Ngama ne pamba tuna ngabar tu ne de ranking gungu madupala maoba tu donge os. Right.
I think it stops at suffering in this lifetime.
Yes, suffering. Yes.
Okay, so basically the doubting part is broken into two categories. So we have the qualm that's presented, and then the response. So the response itself is divided into that which is known, and then the purpose. We begin with, well then, I'll just read the quam and present it as we go. Quam, well then, do the two types of causality, one with respect to projection and the other with respect to actualization, so the projecting and actualizing factors, demonstrate one instance of causality wherein one person takes rebirth, or do they demonstrate two instances? So the question that's arising, being posited, is it one lifetime of a person that it takes for these to occur, or is it 2 lifetimes? So then there are consequences that are going to be presented to these different ways. If the former, so if it was 1 lifetime, it would be incorrect to claim that the actualizing factors, craving, and so on, so the actualizing factors are craving, grasping, and existence. So craving, grasping, and existence occur after the establishment of the group of factors, beginning with resultant period consciousness and ending with feeling. So beginning with resultant period consciousness, then going name and form, the 6 sources, contact, and then feeling. So that's what it's referring to. Those are projected factors. If the latter, there would be no ignorance, compositional activity, or causal period consciousness. Projecting factors in the latter cycle of causality, the ordering of projection. So it's looking at the ordering of the way these things are projected, and if this were the case, then the consequence would be that these initial factors or links wouldn't occur because it would have already been passed by if it was due in relation to ordering. And it says, and no craving, grasping, or existence, actualizing factors in the former cycle of causality, the ordering of actualization. Then there's a response. So this is the response that is known by Geshe Rinpoche. There is no such fault. Because whatever is projected by the projecting causes, and then what we have in parentheses here in the English isn't in the Tibetan, but Rinpoche filled it in, so it's basically what Rinpoche's commentary was filled in the English translation anyway. Projecting causes, ignorance, compositional activity, and consciousness must be created by the actualizing causes, craving, grasping, and existence. When what is projected, name and form, the 6 sources, contact, and feeling, has been actualized, it is that very thing, the projected, that is designated as being born, aging, and dying. So it's saying that that sentient being, that very thing that has been projected, has been actualized, is that very thing, and designated as being born, aging, and dying. So that's what is born, what ages, what dies. And then we get into the purpose or realization. And then there are 3 categories within this. And the first category reads up to where I'm going to read to. Well then, what is the point of presenting 2 cycles of causality? Reply. Such a presentation demonstrates that the characteristics of the true sufferings that are the effects of projection differ from those that are the effects of actualization. So the former, consciousness of the effect period, name and form, the 6 sources, contact, and feeling, are dormant at the time of projection. So this dormancy is referring to it's lying in wait in the form of a seed. So at that point it's dormant, but it's in the form of a seed that will later be actualized, that will later project and project something and actualize something. Since they have not actually been established, they will only become suffering in the future. So they're dormant. They're in the form of seeds that will later give rise to a future suffering, an actualized suffering. However, the latter, birth, aging, and death, are situations in which the suffering has been actualized and hence are suffering in this lifetime. So that ends that first category of the purpose. Diksun.
다 고바시비 군에 너무 때린도다. 페이지게 준대다. 네 로직이 주 저부동에 대보다 타티바니 요르스. 타티바 임발라 타티바 템비셔도 템버스 tombo체 고바시비 군에 내 tombo체 니바들레 네 코아들 로직이 주들라 페이지게 주다 로직이 주니 요르스. 니가 바시비셔도 니 템버스 때 니바들레 니바 다 니바드네 요도 니바 제한 데부조알 알레 오나 어디 데부동에 데마들 타티바니 요바 예비 템비쳐도 담부 고바 gobashi bugun la tambu terendo ona junde kunyin su shebi je shena penje jinde bi du den dans toma mare ba ne ban du je sumba na je son penje gen de bi du den dans roje je ba se ba ta goba la ba chuba se bi ne de du den ni de tate bares tate ba yimbala tate ba yimba tembe je do ne tembres 하마네 제바 메줄로서 두sun가 네 펌비드나 네 펌비드나 사변정도 내지 모마루베 마오바나 동영완조라사 네 시마네 동에데 트루비스 네 거임베스 천들라 동영와오스 어디바 담부들은와 다니바도 텔레라버리자테 안가서도 부살단데 갈리카부들에들마도 제야 데부지와나발라 팬비조단스 kuijiwalanbala phenpi jodan te phampa trubi juni yuwaras juni ngazungi chedo jundu kuyi shebares nipadarendo goba shibuguna la nipadarendo wa tambudu doden tateba niyoba tenpi chedo ni shebares roje ki jutala marawa niyoba chedo ni tenparas goba shibula nipadarche watabadarendo.
So we have two different sections three different sections in the response section. The response that deals with purpose or realization that begins with, well then, what is the point of presenting two cycles of causality? Such a presentation demonstrates that the characteristics of true sufferings are the effects of projection differ from those that are the effects of actualization. The former, consciousness of the effect period, name and form, the six sources, contact and feeling, are dormant in the form of a seed at the time of projection. Since they have not actually been established, they will only become suffering in the future. However, the latter, birth, aging, and death are situations in which the suffering has been actualized and hence are suffering in this lifetime. So that's the first category. The second category deals with the two cycles of cause and effect. Lama. And it's moreover, the two cycles of cause and effect were presented for the sake of demonstrating that the effect taking rebirth has two causes, projecting causes and causes that actualize what has been projected by the projecting causes. 52. Pami Drupi Juni. Then Nipa Kabar Karadu.
Nipa the Nipa Satana Rulda.
Okay.
Nipa
So right
the
to
Jiggy
the quote.
And Sumba Badroa.
Ale, that's that.
Naba Sheban Soal Tubi Bado, Chuba Naso, Sheson Bisharos, what the Badre, Jematic Jiggy the Badua. Tena, Nobody was a Sumba Leon, Sumba.
Nature at Sa, Sumba.
Tangazu Kalelusha, no, what the Nipa Zuma relation, Mara. Taniba Dame, but Co Panic Jutland, Damada New York's Panic Jutan, Logic Joe. New Yobala, New Yoba Shadow, and Temperes. And then they need the Susan Dusana, Lama Papa to me, Saying Wajers, Saying Wajers.
And Saying Uje Sumba.
The new contour, Gobatem on the land, but the nearby the con to Saying Waj down the
Okay, so it's in number 2 still.
Number 1 or 2. It's from Saying Mishi. This commentary by. Sorry.
Oh, I see. And then 3 you'll start down here.
Yeah.
Okay. So Rinpoche is saying that now we have a quote from the levels of yogic deeds, and that is where we find both of the points that Lama Tsongkhapa has made in his response. We find both of those within the levels of yogic deeds. So it's broken up into these two sections that will be heard later, and the levels of yogic deeds supports Lama Tsongkhapa's stance.
Or the nigger called the Saying Waj down the Saying Wajele, Naba Sheba La Subane, Suala to be Bados, naba sheba dan tuma mareba nyeba nju somba nashi naba sheba la soba ne sheba mezo ngaba jeje toba reba duba tsuwa la tubi bata dans jewa dan gashi ne jewa dan gashi do wat ngaba duba shebin debo mareba jewa dan gashi na drebi tseni mi shena ji shir naba ni su ten she nas wat ke zoba du kondo wa zoba de do tama go de na su gyudi go ne yala go do wa cheta ba she na phen bi yala da pham bi yala da ngaba duba shebe yala ko ne phen bi yala kan she na so den ma yong de wo den de do ta gyudi de do jiwa de ga shin de bi chen ye na ji shir na ba ni su ten je nas pham bi jun de da ne 로직 ni su kar chin ten bares ten je na du ge mo bi chen ni ta de ba ten bi shi dans pen ji ji je bi du ge de ba da du ji ji du bi je bi du ge de ba ni de ta de ba yin ba la ta de ba yin ba ten bi shi do res gu ba ten bi gu na ya dong bu de mu de ten bi shi dans pen ba da ju bi jun de ji pen ba da ju bi jun de ji ne iwa yonsu tenbi shiros penbatan sina tuma mariba nipa duji sumba nashi ngoban ruba shibe jeba seba guba lemba ane jiwa de gashu kanga ten zuyo de mariba rado iwa yonsu tenbi shiro she dans jimji kundu dang yondu mariba dama nama she de kanga kundu res kale te na wate jermu jima mabu jini seshi jere madu yinji sanga ka sungu teke gyonda de rendu wata o dal chele ji jan ji sungu da na ulu ma tada zuhu do tada jangu do.
Okay, so we have the quote from the Levels of Yogic Deeds states the reason for this. Given that the factors of birth and aging and death are in the group of factors beginning with resultant period consciousness and ending with feeling. So beginning with resultant period consciousness and then going from that to name and form, 6 sources, contact, and then feeling. So those are the ones that are in between there. And ending with feeling are phenomena that are shared characteristics. Why have they been taught to be of 2 types? This is so we have them taught as projecting and projected. Why are they taught in this way? It says this is done in order to demonstrate the different characteristic of things that bring suffering. So it's looking at the truth of suffering and the different characteristics that bring about this truth of suffering. And then second is in order to demonstrate the distinction between projection and actualization. So it's showing the difference between these projecting and what is actualized. When we look at these different, we have projecting, projected, actualizing, and actualized, and it's showing the difference between what these projected factors and projection is and actualization is. So that's that. And then I don't think Rinpoche read the second part. I think that's where he ended. Rinpoche, the okay, we'll take a short break.
Yeah.
Or write the question and they explain, or write the question to explain.
Okay.
The method.
So we're in this second section now of we're going to get into the second section of the level of yogic deeds. We've already gone over this first section that deals with projection and actualization. So we're back.
로제지 두대니 타테버레스 타테바 임발라 타테바 템비체도레스 렌tambuji 니바들레 펜지기 조다 로제기 조니 여바코이 체도 안송바레스 니바드레무데 니바도 와도 콘도 사용하지 드란드로 사용하지래 나바셰 아래 어클레지 주나야.
Listen. So in this response section, in the section of purpose, we find that there are two sections. First, the section that demonstrates the difference between the effects of projection and those of actualization, and then the second section deals with the two cycles of cause and effect. The two causes, projecting causes and causes that actualize what has been projected. And then we have a quote from Asanga's levels of yogic deeds that supports Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation in those two sections of the differences between the results of the projecting and actualization, and then the two cycles of cause and effect, projecting and causes that actualize what has been projected. So then we get again into the level of yogic deeds.
사이고jel레 나바셰발라 수바네 초알라 투비 바다탄 제와탄 가시네 가시난 제비 체니나 지셔 나바니 수텐시나 펜지기 주제던 로이기 주제니 가르진 템버레스 텐시나 안노데 다 렌조 마르베 텐시나 동에데베 체니 타테바 템베 셔당스 펜지지 동에데바당 로지 동에데바니 타테바레 타테발라 타테바요 템비 셔도 총바제 구빌레 담부지에
맞아요.
다 펜바당 루비 네 펜바당 루비 로도 이와 용수 템비셔 펜지기 주당 로지기 주 타테바임바 템비셔도 노데 참바니 템바레 셰당사 다 연라노 도시나 동에 연라노 도시 동에 대비둘라 신들라 동에 완주시나 니데 저와도 가시 우스 근데 연라 주니가 나네 근데 연라 주니가 나네 안에 가시 안에 동에 대비둘라 신들 동에 와레스나 저와도 가시니 드레스 저와도 가시니 다 연라 도네 동에 대비 두바니라 심말라 동에 코난 주시나 나바셰바네 소알라 투비바도 네 제바 메주 나바 지지 투바레바 듬바 소아 와두스 송도메 나바셰바네 소알라 투비 투바 사변정도 줘바 나소스 네 제바 메주 나바 지지 투바레바 듬바 소아두소 니바 누제지레 송바 나시게 뒤소 사변정도여마도 동행어 두줘요 말이에스 저바 나소 셰송베스 오드바들레 렌니바 찬르다.
Okay, so so it says, given that the factors of so the levels of yogic deeds states the reasons for this. Given that the factors of birth and aging and death, and the group of factors beginning with the resultant period consciousness and ending with feeling, are phenomena with shared characteristics, why have they been taught to be of two types? So those factors, again, beginning with the second half of the consciousness factor, the resultant period consciousness, and then name and form, then six sources, then contact, and then feeling. So it says, why have they been taught in two types? And then Then Asanga responds to that question right within this. It says this is done, A, in order to demonstrate the different characteristics of things that bring suffering. So to show the differences between those things that bring about the truth of suffering, and two, in order to demonstrate the distinction between projection and actualization. So it's showing the difference between projection and actualization. So this is why it's taught in two types. So that this is so when we look at the projecting factors, we have the ignorance, compositional activity, and consciousness, projected, name, form, six sources, contact, and feeling, actualizing, craving, grasping, and existence, and actualized factors, which are birth, aging, and death. So then it says, and also. It says, among the factors, how many are included within true sufferings and become suffering in this lifetime? So it says there are two, birth and aging and death. These are, and it says how many are just included within true sufferings and will only become sufferings in the future. The ones that are dormant, the group of factors beginning with resultant period consciousness and ending with feeling. So again, resultant period consciousness, name and form, the six sources, contact, and feeling are remaining in the form of a seed. They're dormant that will later produce suffering, but they are not producing it at that time. They only become sufferings, it says, in the future. So they abide in the form of a seed or a potential. Sometimes it's translated as. So these are the two different points that are made previously in the question and answer section, summarized in Asanga's text. I think I have it written. So now we get to the third section of the response.
CBGB 소환에 제바 CBGB 소환에 텐데 차진식이 제비거 이노스 어떠봐도 지주자는 말이야.
Therefore, the two factors of craving, which is an actualizing factor, and feeling, which gives rise to this craving, are not in the same sequence of dependent arising. The feeling that gives rise to craving is an effect of some other sequence of dependent arising.
Please, man.
Lesso. Depende dang pambi ni.
다
I
방제다 한번서도 어디 단다
don't think we got there. We ended right there. You know, right? That's where it ended.
어디 연락도 도와달라 지도와 소소시바 도주지 펜추스 들리는 말이야 펜추지 주된시바 주레스 어디 주된시바 소소시바 도주스 찾으러다 펜추디는 말이야 펜지다 펌비 한번에 지시바 샤데스
Okay.
다투마 말이거든 이바 두제길래 네 지바 메조라서 간데스 펜바르스나 펜바다 펌바네 지시바 샤데스 다 고아만도 고아도네 저놈이 어디 갈리 가서들 고라 마무장 송도다 그 징해서 손 담아가 겐도다 그 갈리 가베인도 고라전에 아자 송도도
Okay, so then it says, therefore, the two factors of craving, which is actualizing factor, and feeling, which gives rise to the craving, are not in the same sequence of dependent arising. The feeling that gives rise to craving is an effect of some other sequence of dependent arising. So that falls within the third category of response. Now we get into, so remember when we originally started, we said that there were 6 categories. There was the first category, I'm going to remember now. The first category, which dealt with the classification of the factors, and then the second category, which dealt with the projecting and projected factors, and then the third category, which dealt with the actualizing and actualized factors, and then the fourth category, which dealt with the doubt or debate, the doubt section. And now we get to the fifth category, which deals with four considerations. It says projecting and being projected should be understood by way of four considerations. Projecting factors: ignorance, compositional activity, and consciousness. Projected factors: name and form, six sources, contact, and feeling. It says there are four considerations. So this is difficult material, so we go over it again and again in order for it to be understood. And Lama Tsongkhapa expands this explanation of it, going through each of these different factors classifications. I think that's it. Yes, sir.
What
I think Ngapa, right? Yeah, I think so.
leje bacha gubi tsuji su bacha jabi tsuji anu waten jebi dunga dunga pong yung waris pong bi dunga siba suji ruji yu na jebi tada yurung tu sheba wos pong bi dunga jeba siba tang guba lemba la suba chuli danda yu jen tu yu na jebi tada Jurung tu sheba os roje dan chuba ne sonji sheba sha dan roje dan chuba ne sonji sheba sha de roje sana jeba seba to goba lemba to marbe chuba se gashe sonji sheba sha de kan gen chuba she na jeba seba to goba lemba ne sibi jenji lembe sos 다 제바 세바도 고마 레마도 가 요모 말베 요모 도모 제바 군요모 토마 마리바다 제바 세바도 고바 레마 손데 요모레스 도모 제바 군요모 니바 조바 레이노스 토마 니바 두지게 레는 조바 시비 레니데 레레스 연라 준이가네 군주데 방가 등에데 바두 하마든 등에로스 도모 제바 군요모 니바 조바 레이노 도모 제바 군요모제 니바 조바 레 군주 대방아 등에 대바 가지고 라마 뒤에 등에 대바레스 라마 뒤에 등에 로스 도모 제바 군요 몽고블로도 도모 제바 군요 모 니바 조바 레이노 나제 군주 대방아 라마 뒤에 등에 로스 연라 준이가 라마 뒤에 등에 대바레스 또 우드 레고도 오더레도와 야
there it is. Okay, so projecting and being projected should be understood by way of the four considerations. What has been projected? The 4.5 factors beginning with resultant period consciousness and ending with feeling have been projected. So again, there are 5 factors: resultant period consciousness, name and form, the 6 sources, contact, and then feeling. So those 5. What has done the projecting? Compositional activity, which is dependent on ignorance, has done the projecting. Ignorance creates compositional activity, and that does the projecting. How has a projection occurred? projection has occurred by means of latent karmic propensities being infused in the causal period consciousness. So these imprints that are infused at the causal period consciousness that then results in the resultant period consciousness experience. And it says projected means having created the effects, the resultant period consciousness, name and form, sources, contact, and feeling, conducive to actualization once the actualizers, such as craving, are present. So the actualizing factors of craving, grasping, existence are present. Are present. So that's what those become conducive to actualization. So those are the four. It says the actualizers and the actualized should be understood by way of the three considerations. And then I'll read these three through. Rinpoche didn't read all of them, but I'm just going to read these three through, and then Rinpoche quoted quoted Nagarjuna's text that gives a quote about the links that are afflictions, the links that are karma, the links that are origin of suffering, and the links that are truth of suffering. So what does the actualizing? It is done by grasping, which is caused by craving. What is actualized? Birth and aging and death are actualized. How does actualization occur? Actualization occurs by means of the empowerment of latent karmic propensities that were infused in consciousness by compositional activity. Ignorance, compositional activity, and consciousness spring this project these effects. So then Rinpoche quoted Nagarjuna, and it says, the first, the eighth, and the ninth are afflictions, the second and the 10th are karma, 5 are truth of suffering, 5 are origin of suffering, and 7 are truth of suffering. So the first referring to ignorance, the 8th referring to craving, and the 9th referring to grasping are afflictions. The second referring to compositional activity, and the 10th referring to existence are karma. And then it says 5, the Gonjun Demba Nga Gare.
So
the other 7. So those first 5 that are afflictions I see, karma and afflictions, are the 2 divisions of origin of suffering. Sorry, the translator's a little slow today. When we divide the links into truth of suffering and origin of suffering, we can say that 5 of the links are origin of suffering, because we said that the first, the 8th, and the 9th are afflictions, the 2nd and the 10th are karma. So those all fall categorically under the origin of suffering. So then the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 11th, and 12th are truth of suffering. So these are how we divide them. So I can divide them by name just because Rinpoche did. So the first, ignorance, the 8th, which is craving, and the 9th, grasping, the 2nd, which is compositional activity, and the 10th, which is existence, refers to origin of suffering. And then truth of suffering refers to the consciousness, consciousness, name and form, 6 sources, contact, feeling, and then birth, aging, and death all categorically fall under the truth of suffering. So those are 7, as long as, I think that was all 7. So the first, 8th, 9th, 2nd, and 10th are origin, the other 7 are truth of suffering. Bigson Rinpoche. So now a doubt arises. So if we were to ask, if we compare the two, the truth of suffering and origin of suffering, are there 3 permutations, 4 permutations, are they mutually exclusive, are they synonymous, then? Existent that results.
And then you are to choose the Nendaba Maibata. The Nendaba Imbata, Raju Kunu Demolition, could do by imbase. Raju Kunu Demolition water and Tomo Maribata, Niban Duji, ladies who are imbase. Could do an imbase. The dance on the Yala Junior to Nendaba, Shakukas, British.
So the Chuchen Yanjasura.
That the Nendaba Kunu de Moson Majikari and then when I general Moson in Laukanajiro. Kunu Deba in a Dunga Deba image. Dunga Deba in a Kunu Deba images. She look a general resident to
okay.
Dunga Deba in Kunu Deba Mai, Kunu Deba Juju to go this. Patient is in the Euro. Is a general Caribbean Maro.
So the reason that that this doubt arises when we compare the two, truth of suffering and the origin of suffering, is because when we look at the definition of the origin of suffering, it's that which gives rise to suffering. Within the type that gives rise to the suffering of cyclic existence, is that of the type which gives rise to the suffering of cyclic existence. And then the truth of suffering is defined as that which is the result of the origin of suffering, or the origin of cyclic existence?
Yes.
So we find this definition, I'm sorry if I didn't get it exact, but in the collected works of Panchen Sunandrapa, and what others posit as the definitions, I'm not sure. But then if we were to really say correctly, we would say that there are 3 permutations, really. If we were to present it, we would say that if it is the origin of suffering, it is necessarily the truth of suffering. But if it is the truth of suffering, it is not necessarily the origin of suffering. And then if we would say posit that which is the truth of suffering, but not the origin of suffering, we could say a mountain in cyclic existence, or a mountain is the truth of suffering, but isn't the origin of suffering, because it isn't among the type that gives rise to suffering. So then, now we got to get back to the 12 links problem. So then, if we would say that the two, so what is it, the first and the second? So that
the last one, I'm going to get to the lover of that. I'm going to go to Leno. And how much doing Dungelos? She's on base, Tansuna. Doing about the Kunu de Banis, which she Kunu de Badina, doing about doing his and that. Let the Jawijo Marva.
The Lapsa, then the Jungare, the Tomaripa dan Duje Le Chuchen, the Tenjo Gar.
Tamba Jiba Gunyamo, Niba Tamba Jiba Gunyamo, Niba Jiba Lenos, Kunu de Bangayus, Kunu de Banga, Dunga de Bamaino Marva.
So what's the consequence within the 12 links? Remember there was a... Then the Nama de Rinpoche, the Chiran de Lasan, the Dendel Yenla Juni Chuchen, the
Dendel Yenla Juni Chuchen, Dunga de Bamayibatas. Dendel Yenla Juni Chuchen.
Dendel Yenla Juji Chuchen, Dungyal Demba Mayimba. So the 12 links of dependent origination are not the truth of suffering. Dungyal Mayinde, Dungyal Demba Mayinde.
Dunga Demba Mais Lagur Beta. Dunga Demba Mayina Imbatal, Ranjukunju Demba Kudu by image.
And then we would say they are among the type which gives rise to the suffering. So you would say that the 12 links of dependent origination are the truth of suffering because they are among the type that gives rise to suffering. But that would be origin of suffering.
Pension Sunatraba's definition and the Gumuludu Nagarjuna's definition is a little bit contradicted. So how do you explain Rinpoche means that? Right?
Right.
Because according to Pension Sunatraba's definition for the Dongmen Demba,
It's of the type which comes from the origin of suffering.
so that's traveling chijen, general chijen, the
Right.
way bata, Ranju Kunju Demba, Dongmen Demba, right?
They are, because they're among the type that comes from the origin of suffering.
Suffering.
The 12 links come from
Yes,
the origin
origin
of
of
suffering. Oh, I see. So that's the issue. So
So that's
if it says, so okay, so
Contradictory.
Nagarjuna says that 5 of the links are origin and
Divided
7
into
of the
two,
links
yeah,
are truth of suffering.
two parts, right?
That there are 2 parts.
Yeah.
But if you say, the way Rinpoche is saying, the 12 links of dependent origination are the truth of suffering because they are among the type which comes from the origin of suffering. So that's the consequence. So we say, here Nagarjuna says that there's 2 divisions, but we can say by logic that it fits all into one division because they are among the type which comes from the origin of suffering. So this is the doubt that can occur. Thank you very much, Rabbi.
장어 두제 루도 대반나던 내지 말বে 대지 카두도 파신을 요로 하신 말이야 루도 대반나던
맞아요.
루도스 대반이 주주 저는 대반나던 집인데 대지로 파신 대지 카두도 요래
So we find in the Abhisama Alamkara, where it's presented, it says established truths. And then that's referring to the established. The drup is referring to the 2 truths. And the truths is referring to the 4 noble truths. So in the Perfection of Wisdom literature, we find the presentation of this material.
당아서 되는마 왔다 로지 주바네 송지 시바샤데 강근 주바시나 시비 제지라바 오스 로지 당 주바선 로지선 제바시바 고발나바 송도 말바 주바시바 주바네 가시 말바
그렇지.
송지 시바샤데 강근 주바시나 시비 제지라바 오스 제바시바 그주시바를 텐데 고발나바 강 주바시나 가쇼스 가시스 저와도 가시 딘제 보면은 제단 루바시나 류지제 나시를 간데스 루바르스나 류지제 나시라 그룹이 레제 바자 네바 투진도 셰비 수지 토마리 바드니 바드이 레사나 소마 나시게 되도 바샤 자자바데 제바 세바도 고발렘바 데수도 발라테네 네바 투진도 주비 수지보들 제보도 루용어레스 취지소 다들 뭐 공도 장원도 텐데도데 당 네 상가당 어질무지 네 상가당 네 텐데도데 이니 말베 텐데도데 이니 그런다 뭐도 주장용도
Lasso.
야 텐데도데도 저와 지부 루비야라도 시네 네 가시다다기 예미도 송소 텐덴도레 루베이니 그거 텐덴도레도 네 지와드기 예미들 네 가와드 쇼와니 예미 송사스 뭐즈비 고아쳐 보면도 퀄리티사 신체다 기는 그래 신을 그러다 뭐든 예미 송도 대단나 예미 송소 대단나 렌딜라 모 마리비 군나한테 렌딜라 미 모비 마리비 군나한테 메기레 나실라 랭에비 바차자네스 디바 먹어사네 네 손바 나지게 돼도 바차자네 나 송송도 나 송지 제두지 나신의 수입받은 루바시바테 다시네 시네니제야 수다발레스 토마 마리바드 니바드 레사샤바드 제바시바다 고발레바니 야수도발 출리다바 인사 말바 야수다발레 바차 투진도 주네 바차 네바 투진도 주네 마차메 간 탈라네 레벨 강도 번져서 나브 인사 말바 주네 시망간도 제가 손주라스 야 다음에 비전라 모비 마리비 Kunalante, Ledilla Maribata, Tekonanilla Mariba, Tekona, Ledilla Maribuna, Deba Magosana, Nazul Chea. Tekonanilla Maribuna, the Sunog late and the Sana, Dendro Chea, or to Sunday, summer back. Yantabit, Yantabit, Maribe, Kunalambe, Tekonanilla Mariba Maria. Le camp de Dubi, Chutin la Soba, Chutin dans Jimba la Soba, Sona J, de Jin, Niban de Gigle, les San de Gitan, quand comme Dubi, Chenin Gombasso, quand comment, Tazo dans le même Gigle de la Wade, Chenin Charles, moi j'ai jadu au Marais, pas j'ai ça tout le monde, pour te dire rien je comprends Gigle, Chenin Charles. Je me fais le cinéma. Moi, je vais m'arrêter. Moi, je t'en ai pas dans le langue sur le trésor de Rome. Quand on met du béchéné, Gombassou, Chéné Gombassou, je prends le tige de Chéné Gona, je prends le tige les agouezero. Je mets le tige, un tige Chéné Gombaïna, un meilleur de tige, les embos, Pachajané. Depuis le temps, quand commis l'aïe de Dieu, n'a jamais su bata, l'oron de Chebate, Sénédien, sur la village, Pacha, tout tient tout son nez, chemin, dentro de date de Tchewasu, Toubosa. C'est à bien là, tu n'y peux pas, Yom Batan, les temps. De gens sont deux des le même le dossier tombe j'ai pas connu mon ni pas tu vas les nos connu de bangaje lama de gens los tenez là tu n'y dans connu de banga tombe j'ai pas connu mon ni pas tu vas ngaje connu de ba lama de gens là tu n'y dans lama de gens de bares de gens chez sont pas nos ça Salu Jambindolene, Salu Jambindo Jangoyondoa, Salu Jambindolene, il y en a Juni Dubi, Gege son ça. Marie, il y en a Juni, il y a du son Salu Jambindole, Marie, ne t'es pas pourtant, Shinkal Poja, exemple, Shinkal Poja, toi Marie Bate, son talking sur Namgyal, l'aide Shinkaji. Marie Bideba pu Leji Shinkalas, Leji Shinkala, Nanshi Sabentone, Sumba Nanshi Sabentaba, the Sibi Genji, Nanshi Sabenta, Jeba Sibata, Guban Nebechu, Lembershene, Mai Neto, Mezuji Nukuba Shedo, what to be Abbreviated to A.
Okay. I'm just going to begin with the actualizers and the actualized should be understood by way of the three considerations. What does the actualizing? It is done by grasping and is caused by craving. So the eighth and the ninth links. What is actualized? Birth and aging and death are actualized. How does actualization occur? Actualization occurs by means of the empowerment of the latent karmic propensities that were infused in consciousness by compositional activity. And then, so there, that ends there, and then we get into Basu Bandhu's view. So far we've gone through the view according to Asanga and the levels of yogic deeds. Now we get into Basu Bandhu's views that we find in the explanation of dependent origination, the explanation of the divisions of dependent arising. And it says, Basu Bandhu in his explanation of the divisions of dependent arising took the factor of birth as the only actualized factor, and then taught aging and death to be the faults of these factors of projection and actualization. It took birth as the only actualized factor instead of where we previously find birth, aging, and death as the actualized factors. Vasubandhu takes only this one factor of birth. And it says, this being the case, actualization should be understood as follows. Non-virtue is compositional activity that is motivated by ignorance about karma and its effects. So when we look at, there are two different types of ignorance. Ignorance about karma and its effects, and ignorance of the nature of reality. So this section's dealing with ignorance of karma and its effects, then we get into the next section that deals with ignorance of karma, of the nature of reality. Ignorance of karma and its effects gives rise to miserable lower realm rebirths. Ignorance of the nature of reality gives rise to higher realm rebirths. And then invariable karma gives rise to the form and formless realms. We'll get into that when I get into that section, though. This being the case, actualization should be understood as follows. Non-virtue is compositional activity that is motivated by ignorance about karma and its effects, deposits latent propensities of bad karma in the consciousness. This makes ready for actualization the group of factors of a miserable rebirth that begins with the resultant period consciousness and ends with feeling. So again, begins with resultant period consciousness, then name and form, then sources, then contact, and then feeling. Through repeated nurturing by craving and grasping. So this nurturing is like pouring water on a seed that will grow. So this nurturing by craving and grasping, and later on actually makes that point about a seed in a field and the water being the craving, grasping. These latent propensities are empowered, and birth, aging, and so forth will be actualized in subsequent miserable rebirths. So this is the karma created and imprints created due to an ignorance about karma and its results. Then alternatively, motivated by the ignorance about the meaning of selflessness, so this is that second category of ignorance, meritorious compositional activities such as ethical discipline within the desire realm, or invariable compositional activities such as cultivation of meditative serenity within the higher deities realms. So when we look at the Parshin teachings, Prajnaparamita teachings, we see that if it is the projecting karma for a form or formless realm rebirth is necessarily meditative serenity. Meditative serenity or calm abiding is necessarily that which projects, is the projecting karma for a form or formless realm rebirth. So this is how that is actualized and what actually projects it. So it depends on latent propensities of good karma in the consciousness. So it depends on necessarily, though, this meditative serenity, which categorically then falls into immutable or invariable karma. This makes ready for actualization the group of factors beginning with the resultant period consciousness and ending with feeling for, respectively, a happy rebirth in the desire realm or rebirth as a deity in the higher realm. So the resultant period consciousness, again, name and form, sources, contact, and then feeling as a deity in the higher realms. Through repeated nurturing by craving and grasping, so again, this nurturing is like water, these latent propensities are empowered. And subsequently, birth and so forth will be actualized in those happy realms, so within the desire realm. The 12 factors, moreover, are subsumed under 3 paths, those of afflictions, karma, and suffering. As the wise Nagarjuna said, the first, the 8th, and the 9th are afflictions. The 2nd and the 10th are karma. The remaining 7 are sufferings. So this is, again, that quote we previously presented by Nagarjuna. And then it says the Rice Seedling Sutra, so this is a sutra, mentions 4 causes which subsume the 12 factors of dependent arising. It explains that when the seeds of consciousness sown in the field of karma by ignorance are subsequently moistened by the water of craving, they give rise to the sprout of name and form in the mother's womb. So then we give rise to this name and form, and then we have this potentiality. Deepa Midewa Dendra Drupi Watershin Dixon Rinpoche.
다들 가만히 놓다 전에 연락 주니 특질 주고 생긴 주고 뭐 도줘야 되려고 봐.
So then now the next section we get into is the number of lifetimes it takes to complete the 12 links. 1 lifetime, 2 lifetimes.
sumba tsetele zuba ne tsetula zuba ne pemba da pambi yola badu keba tanlen de cheba sila sa penji yola to mari ba ni ban duje gele sumba na she da jeba mezo ngaba ji toba reba te ba do keba tanlen de cheba yoares se shemal zuba yoares songdua.
Okay, so it says
la la le ga yori la le jang rebe yang dan ju rebe lenga ne keba mo le ba ina jin da chu ngong du rebe tu zo tu so isa ma ba.
So it says, while it is possible, so the number of lifetimes required to complete all 12 factors, while it is possible for countless eons to go between the projecting and projected factors, it is also possible for the projected factors to be actualized in the very next lifetime with no intervening lifetime. So it says countless eons can go on between the projecting, which are the ignorance, compositional activity, and consciousness, and the projected factors, which are name and form, the 6 sources, contact, and feeling. So it's saying many eons can go on in between that. So when we look at that quote that we've gone over many times before, that it says it doesn't matter if eons have passed. When the causes and conditions are present, the karma will, the seed will give rise to a result. So karma will give rise to a result. So no matter how many eons pass, that doesn't end. It will eventually, and Rinpoche said the causes and conditions are there, give rise to a result. And then we find this here, that it's possible for countless eons to go by between the projecting and projected factors. So that ties in with that quote we've said in the past about that the karma doesn't perish even if eons pass. When the causes and conditions are there, a result will occur. The karma sum yure.
Tan roji jela da chubi yola ni ne pa ma je dong yu chinil zu de des jeba seba guba leba juba seba ne juba seba an juju jo jo mu da ji chinil zu des.
Since the actualizing factors, craving, grasping, and existence, and the actualized factors, birth, aging, and death, occur within an intervening lifetime, it is possible at the shortest to complete all 12 factors in 2 lifetimes.
Yeah.
So we'll end there, and we'll get back to this next time. I know everyone's very excited about this section. I can see it.
Yeah, you have to read it again and again. Yeah. Otherwise, you cannot get
It's very, very confusing.
Yeah.
So we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. And just so everybody remember, this is material that's debated in the Prajnaparamita by monks who memorize this and study it every day for like 10 years when they get to this.
No, 35 years.
Well, I mean, but it's about 10 years when you're in Prajnaparamita fully into this. So
Yeah,
that's
10 years.
7 days a week, non-stop.
Academy finished in 7 years. I should say 10 years.
So concluding mandala offering.
They double patient double Ludingo patient go live a chagmarilla. That's Ralph Colosuanga Sudochi come the gates go in and go to but Lucha go to Marilla. So what's a
Where did my book go?
Yeah.
Whenever I don't have one, I forget it. Every time. Thank you. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular the essential teachings of the Lobsang Drakpa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Abboteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Gutsi Shapi